Hi folks, welcome back to my tutorial, and for today's video we're gonna take a look at this very huge mixer, which is the mx8000a manufactured by BEHRINGER. Now, this mixer is designed specifically for recording purposes. However, you can still use this mixer for live purposes, live events like concert, for example. Now, to discuss this mixer very clearly, let's start first with the input sections and then the output section. Now, as I have mentioned, this is designed for recording purposes, and this is a 48-channel mixer. Now, if you will notice, we only have 24 strips, and that is for the first 24 channels. And then you have here this second set of knobs, which is for the 25th to 48 channel. And during recording, the first 24 channels is what you're gonna use. And during playback, the next 24 channels is what you're gonna use. However, you can still use all 48 channels at the same time. That's why still, this is a 48 channel mixer. Now, let's take a look on the input section. I'm gonna focus this camera on the input terminals. Right here, we have the first 24 channels. We have the XLR, we have the line in. And between these two inputs, you can select by pressing this button right here. Next, we have the direct out. Now, whatever you inputted on the line in or on the XLR terminal, you can get that same signal through this direct out. Next, we have this insert point right here. Now, the purpose of this insert point is to add a dynamics processing for this particular channel, right? For example, this channel 15. And we have a particular cable, which is so-called the Y cable, which must be plugged in here. And what it does is, on this insert point, it will take the signal from that terminal, send that signal to a processing device, and the output of the processing device will go back on the same terminal. Now, again, this is the first 24 channels, and the next 25 channels will be located at the back of this console. Now, let me check if we can take a look on the back. Now, that is what it looks like. We have this set of TRS terminals right there. That is the 25th to 48 channels. This is the 47 and 48 channel. And then we have a set of sub outputs right there and main outputs. Okay, back to the console. Again, that first 24 channels, which is consisted of the XLR and line-in inputs, is for the first 24 channels with dedicated EQ, in which the EQ consisted of low, high, and two semi-parametric on the mids. It comes with 6 auxiliary outputs, a pan, knob, solo button, mute button, of course the master fader, and lastly the routing options. Now, if you are not familiar with this knobs, let's just take a look on how it sounds. First and foremost, let me just discuss how I connected this mixer on the inputs and outputs. First, I have a Shure SM58 which is connected through the channel 22, which is this guy right here. Next, on the channel 23 and 24, this is my input which is coming from my laptop. And from my laptop, I will generate a pink noise or some kind of music right there. And then on the output, this is my main output, which is connected to a very small speaker, which is a JBL Go. We have a auxiliary out 1, which is this guy right here. And that is connected to my phone with an Rta Analyzer. And lastly, this guy right here is the one connected to my video recorder. Now, to discuss these knobs, which might be confusing to some other guys right there, first, let's use this channel 22, which is my Shure SM58. First, after connecting the Shure SM58 to that XLR input right there on the channel 22, the first thing we need to do is to set this knob right here. This guy right here. This is the gain knob. And the way you set this knob is first, you have to press this solo button. This guy right here. And when I speak, check, test, check, check, check. It should be at an average of 0 dBu, which is right here. And whatever you press on solo, you can see the input signal by looking at this meter right here. So whenever I speak, you can see that it's popping up right there. Now, if I turn this gain all the way up, check, test, check, 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 test, check, check, test, check, you will see the check, test, check, test. You will notice that I am clipping the preamp, which means the output from this channel is distorted, and of course the output on the main mix is also distorted. Now, if I'm going to turn this knob all the way down, check, test, check, 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 it's almost impossible to hear me through this channel 22, and it's not even popping out on this level meter. That's why you have to set this knob at a certain level in which the signal is completely audible and at the same time it's not distorted. Check, test, check, check, test, check, check, test. Next, right after setting the knob, you may want to adjust the EQ. And for those who are not familiar with the equalizer, what this does is to change the quality of the sound by adjusting the gain of a certain frequency. And what we have here is, we have this high frequency, which is set at 12 kHz, low frequency, set at 80 Hz, low mid, which is a semi-parametric, which means you can choose the frequency that you want to adjust, and then you can cut that or boost. Likewise, on the high mid, you have a selectable frequency and adjust that through this knob. You can boost or you can cut. And if it's hard to understand, let me just give you an example on what it looks like. Right here, I have a Android phone with a Rta Analyzer. And what this does is, it analyzes the signal and gives you an idea on what is the average tone of that signal. As I speak, you can see that it's popping up. Now, to give you a more clear data on analyzing this signal, let me give you an example of a pink noise. And for those who are not familiar with pink noise, this is what it looks like. In 3, 2, 1. This is the pink noise. And this is how it sounds. Okay, clear. Next, To understand this equalization knobs here, we will be using this pink noise to generate signal on this channel 23 and 24 and send that signal to this Android phone. Again, that will be our signal, and what I'm gonna do is to adjust the EQ and see what it does on the signal by looking on this Android phone. Again, as you can see, whenever we tweak these knobs, it changes the output signal, which is affected by different set of frequencies. Again, to make it more clear, let me just play a sample music file here. Again, now, on this equalizer section, you have here this EQ in button. And if you want to enable this EQ, you have to press this button right here. Or if you don't want to use the EQ, you can depress this one. Next, we have the low cut button right here. And what this does is, once you press this, it attenuates that signal below 75 Hz. And the effect of that one is it reduces the bass. And this one is normally pressed when your input is a microphone, especially when the person talking on that microphone has a very low, very good register on the low frequencies. Next section, we have the auxiliary outputs. And what this does is, aside from sending your channels to the main output, you can also send this set of channels to another set of outputs. Right now, we have this auxiliary 1, auxiliary 2. You have a pre-fader button. You have these two knobs which can be auxiliary 3 and 4 or auxiliary 5 and 6 by pressing this shift button right here. Now, again, this auxiliary outputs is from the term itself, auxiliary out. You can have a separate output going maybe into another speaker or another building or a Facebook Live, something like that. Now, you have a button right here, which I mentioned, which is the pre-fader button. Now, to understand this auxiliary, let's just give you a better visualization. Check mic 1, 2, check, test. Now, when I move my fader down, check, test, check, test, check. Again, this Android phone is connected to the auxiliary one, which is this set of knobs right here. Check, test, check, test, check. And you see this signal going to the cell phone because my fader is up right here. If I'm going to turn this down, check. You can see also that the signal is not coming to my phone. But then, when I press this knob right here, check, test. Even if I turn this down and I speak, you may not hear my voice going to the video recorder, but the signal will be sent to my phone. And that is the purpose of this button right here. And to give you a definition of this button, this means when it's pre-fader or disengage, it means it is post-fader. And these two auxiliaries is dependent on this master fader. If this button is pressed, it means pre-fader, which means these two knobs right here is independent of the fader. Check. Now again, you have this two remaining knobs for the auxiliary, which can be 3 and 4 or 5 or 6 by pressing the shift right here. And again, you have this pre-fader knob button right here. Next is the source. The purpose of this source button is to select which signal is going to the EQ. It can be the first 24 channels or the next 24 channels. Now, again, as I have mentioned, this mixer is specifically designed for recording. And once you have recorded the set of channels, you may want to play back that recorded song through the second layer, which is the 25th channel up to the 48th channel. Next, you have this pan knob right here. And what this does is you can pan left or pan right the signal. Right, for example, on this channel 22, which is my Shure SM58, if I tweak this knob all the way to the left, check, test, check, test, check. Now, again, you have this PFL or pre-fader listening, and what this does is when you press this guy right here, you can listen to the headphone and listen what is coming in on this channel without affecting by the fader right here. And this is very widely used during live situation. And aside from that, when you press this guy right here, you can see the strength of the signal by looking on this meter right here. Next, you have the mute button. And of course, it mutes the signal. Check. Now, next section will be the routing options. Again, we have this master fader right here. And what I did is, I send this channel directly to the main mix by pressing this main mix button right here. But there are some instances like, for example, you have a drum set right here with a 6-channel microphones. And there are a couple of drummers that coming in and coming out. And some of the drummers hit the drums very loud and some hits the drum set very soft. Now, what you can do is, instead of sending this set of channels directly to the main mix, what you can do is disengage these channels to the main mix. It means it will not go to the main mix directly. And then assign this set of channels to subgroup 1 and 2. Press, 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 press. Now, what I did is, I assigned this set of channels to subgroups 1 and 2 by pressing these guys right here. Now, this channels is sent here. And when you turn this up, check, test, check, check, check. The signal is sent to this subgroup 1 and 2. And what you can do now is, send this subgroup to the main mix by pressing this 2 guy right here. Check, test. And that's it. Again, you have multiple routing options. You can route these channels to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and also main mix. Check, test, check, 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 test, check, check, test, check. Now, just to visualize these meters right here, I engage all of this routing button on the channel 22. Now, what I did is, I sent this channel 22 to main mix, to 7 and 8, 5 and 6, 3 and 4, and 1 and 2. Now, you can disengage this channel right here. Check, check. What I did is, after sending this channel to these subgroups, I sent this subgroup to the main mix by pressing these 2 buttons right here. Check, test, check, 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 check. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Check, test. Now, the last but not the least is the output sections. Again, we have these subgroups here. We have the meter bridge. And we have this set of stereo settings right here. Now, again, you have 6 auxiliaries. After sending these channels, this will be your master volume for these auxiliaries. And then there are some instances that you may want to send this auxiliary to a signal processing. Send the auxiliary to signal processing, then the output of signal processing will be sent back to this terminals right here, and the terminals will be controlled by the set of knobs right here. Of course, you have the talkback section, and phones 1 and phone 2. And that's it. I hope you like this video. Thanks for watching out, guys.